So what's it really like to run a real estate team? I mean, from the outside, it can look glamorous, but what is it like day in and day out to build a successful sales team? If you're exploring careers in real estate, this might be a question you're pursuing, and we're going to answer it today. My guest today is Jimmy Reed. Jimmy runs a very successful sales team in San Clemente, California, the Reed team. And he's also a longtime Pro R.E.A staffing client. In fact, right now we're looking for a real estate assistant to join his team. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity to wrangle him in. I've got 30 minutes of his time, and we're going to find out what a day in his life is like and what it really looks like to grow a successful real estate team. And man, that's a lot to pack into 30 minutes. So let's get into it. Jimmy, thank you for joining me. How did you get started? Yeah. Why real estate? How did you get into it?
Well, I was raised around it back in the day when mortgage and real estate would kind of flowed hand in hand. There were, there were kiosks sometimes in the big giant Bank of Americas and Wells Fargo's. There was on Saturdays, there'd be a little realtor desk off to the side. And, it's always seemed, as a kid, you're like, wow, that's kind of cool. They get to sell these houses, I started out as a single agent in the 90s and here in Southern California, and very competitive market, for the first 7 years, right into what we know now as the Great Recession. In 2000, really for us, it started in 2007, went through 2011, and then it started climbing from there, and here we are today. But providing just great service, and then really never aspired to grow a team, but realized I slowly had one because I needed so much help. Transaction management, I couldn't do that anymore. My wife and I were working, together in the business, and she just recently, our youngest is leaving the house, so she took a hiatus and probably an early retirement. I don't know if we'll get her back, but she was the operations. So we started with me getting an assistant to replace her, pretty much. She was doing the operations, and then one thing led to another, and we went from 30, 40, 50 transactions a year to 60 to 70 to, in some parts of the market, in some parts of the industry, that's no big deal. But in our area, it's a big deal because it's a bigger transaction. Our average sales price today is, just under 800,000. So we went to, and for our area, that's not a massive transaction. But for us, it was a lot. And so next thing I know, I'm at 80, 90 transactions, and then we're at 100 and 120. So last year in 2020, we closed out at just under 190 transactions, and we still didn't have enough help, So I think it just comes down to, if you just serve the clients right, do what you say you're going to do, you do it at a very high level, I think you just always, have work to do.
So you explained how the admins you started hiring admins. When did you decide to start hiring sales agents? And talk about your first sales agent that you brought on board.
Right. So that happened because I joined this little company out of Seattle over 10 years ago, when no one knew who Zillow was. And I was starting to get the phenomena of reviews were coming around, right? Mm-hmm. And all of my clients were just throwing reviews on there unsolicited. I wasn't really asking for them, Today we beg for them, but right. It started happening, and pretty soon I couldn't field all that. I was having to tell people no, or I'm available next weekend, or, and it was getting out of hand. So I needed help. And so I made all the mistakes. So if I were going to write my first book, Vanessa, would be like how to make all the mistakes right away in real estate and growing a team. I would be the author, but I did all that. And I brought in people that I liked, didn't understand DISC assessments and things like that, really wasn't coached. So I just made mistakes. People were not portraying your brand or what you had done to build the business properly, and I wasn't conveying how to do it. So it was kind of a mess for the first 3 or 4 years until I decided to get I got professionally coached, and then realized the biggest change wasn't with the other people, it was with me.
Amen. But I have to stop you right there because you did do one thing right that I talked to too many people who do wrong. You hired all the admin staff you could to serve your needs until you absolutely needed to get a buyer's agent. You
Right.
didn't start with, oh, I'm an agent and I want a team, so I'm going to find a buyer's agent. You
Oh
got
yeah.
the admin help first. And that
Yeah.
is
Right.
like key to
Right.
max out your admin support before you start bringing on buyer's agents. So you got that part right.
Yeah. Well, that was by accident. That wasn't like planned. I didn't read a book, I didn't read the book Scaling Up until later in retrospect
Yeah.
and go, well, okay, I got that part right, but it was because I wasn't planning on growing a team and I needed all the support I could get. But then I got to the point where I'm like, okay, this isn't working. I need help. I'm not taking any time off. So, and our service wasn't dropping, but I knew that it was going to if some didn't give. So that's what we did. Yeah.
Right. So what is your value proposition to the agents who you now recruit to your team? Now that you've figured out who you want and how things are structured, what's your pitch or what's the attraction to come and work for you?
It's a good question. Our value proposition is, look, we already have a brand. I take agents like, the two top agents on my team. Both of them are younger. They're in their, one just turned 30, one just barely over 30. They were barely in the business for any time at all. Both of them were kind of struggling to get traction, not because they're not great people. They are, not because they're smart, not because they don't want to work hard. They work hard. But the reality is they needed a brand that they could leverage. They needed opportunity and not just leads, right? Not just leads and a high split, because, 100% of nothing is still nothing. What they needed was, a role model that they could follow that would build into their lives with professional coaching, a plan, a scalable plan for them where they could build their business way beyond what I would ever do, even to the point, Vanessa, and this, long-term where I may not be in the office every day. But the brand is, and we have a director of operations, we've got all that stuff going for them, marketing and so on and so forth. So in short, I would just say our value proposition is that I have proof. Here's a cup. Talk to them. Don't talk to me. Talk to these guys in the office, these guys and gals, and ask them how they went from doing 4 or 5, 6 transactions to now, my top senior sales partner, this 4-year agent in his 4th year is going to close. He just closed 64 transactions in 2020. The number 2 did just under 60 transactions, right? And they're crushing it. And they have executive assistants. They have, thanks to you and being partners with you, you helped us scale the team properly, right? And so the bottom line is, whoever you're talking to, solo agent, you want to join a team, you don't want to join a team, when people are making promises, I would always ask, can you show me or introduce me to 2 or 3 other people, even one person that you've done that same thing with, right? And oftentimes you're gonna hear crickets, or you're gonna see the shuffling of feet, and and that's what I saw early in my career. So what we're doing doesn't exist everywhere. There's a handful of teams in Southern California that do it, but I bet you there's under 100 teams that work our scale within the U.S.
Right. And for them, instead of that, so sort of to recap, they get to come into a proven system. They get support, coaching, mentorship,
right?
Admin support, leads. So why would you want to start from scratch on your own when you can be part of a better system? And some people want their name on the sign, and they're going to do that. But I think for a majority of agents, if you can find the right team that has the right culture fit for you, then it makes a lot of sense.
I think you said it. So I talk to people like, do you want to do a lot of surgeries, or do you want your name on the hospital building? Make sure you want your name on the hospital building and all that goes with it, right? Because, it costs millions of dollars to be able to, build what we've built over, 23 years, millions. And so if you're looking for, like, if you know anything about cap rates or ROI, or it's to be able to create that kind of revenue for yourself and your business and your team. It costs a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money and time, and you just can't buy a reputation or a brand. But what you can do, and this is the smartest thing I've ever seen, as far as apprenticeships, right? What you can do is cozy up next to someone with the right motives, of course, and just, hey, and let that person, that guy or gal, be your sensei, and just do everything just follow them around, ask to do whatever you need to do. It's kind of an old school lost art form of doing that kind of stuff, Vanessa, but really that's where you're going to get the opportunity, because oftentimes those team leaders, those business owners, they don't have anyone to turn it over to.
Right.
They don't have anyone to take over
There's no
and
exit
there's
plan.
just tons of business there. Yeah, there's no exit strategy. So,
Yeah.
I'm not exiting the business anytime soon, but I would say within the next 10 to 15 years, I'm probably, my wife and I are probably going to want to be, bouncing around the world or wherever, God willing. So, but to recap it, I would just say the biggest, whether it be me or anybody else's team, you always want to ask them to show you, be the Missourian, the show me state. Make sure that they show you examples, introduce you to other people on the team, or that way you can get from them and they'll be honest with you, right? They're the best candidates for you to interview, not necessarily just the team leader.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about your day in the life now. So as we hopped on, you were dealing with writing an offer that you had to deal with. I know you're bouncing around all the time. So how much of your time is spent actually selling real estate? How much of it is spent managing the team, coaching and training and supporting? Like, how does your day lay out, or your week? Maybe that's a better time frame to look at.
Right. So what I'm going to describe is what I'm trying to build for the team. So when I'm trying to build everyone's business within my team, so I look at them as sales partners. Think of a law firm, right? So I'm a senior sales partner. I have 2 other senior sales partners, and it's production and tenure that gets you to those different levels, which also they keep more in their pocket, but they put back into the business. Why? Because then it's scalable, then it's sustainable for everybody. And this senior sales partner goes out, to Italy for 2 weeks. This other senior sales partners knows all the systems that we're already using, same strategies, same communication. All of their clients, by the way, see us on our videos and working side by side. There's high trust, right? And so, it works really, really well and makes it super scalable. Why would anybody leave at that point, right? So you have all this support. So I'm at a point now in my business, again, it's usually up at the 10 and 12-year mark if it's built right, consecutively over a decade, where you're going to have a lot of what we call center of influence and past client in your database that are transacting and aren't really going to go anywhere else. They're just not going to. And as long as you're loving on them in the way that you give them the service and everything, that's going to be good. So I'm at a point in my career where I do take on new clients. I just do, because they say, hey, Jimmy, so-and-so referred me, or I know that you've sold their house. Would you please work with us? And I'm probably never going to say no. But I would say 80% of my clientele is past clients, center of influence, their kids, their parents, et cetera. And so I have a lot of support between my director of operations, marketing. I have a production partner that does a lot of showings for me. And when it comes down to decision-making, negotiating, that's just me. And what I just described for you is exactly what happens with our sales partners. We scale the team the same way, underneath them and above them, right? So they're in front of the clients that they need to be doing with their highest and best use at all times. So the day in a life, hey, I'm doing it with you right now. I'm on other Zillow calls. I like to give back. I like to participate. I'm still learning. I'm learning a lot. From newer, older agents, different parts of the country, to make my team better for our clients and me better for our team. So I would say from a just 30,000 foot view, I work probably 5.5, 6 days a week. And then at this point, I take quite a bit of time off throughout the year in different parts of the year as I can, because I built a team to be able to handle that. But I would say on a given week, I'm probably working 48 to 50 hours a week. I consider this work, even though it doesn't feel like work. So that's part of it. And, I would say 40 to 50% of the time is working on my business. 40 to 50% of the time is working on the business, like from a team leader standpoint, developing. And then the other margin of time is doing things like I'm doing right now, on Zoom calls, panels, masterminds, and things like that I can be a part of. So, and then every week doesn't look exactly the same. It never is, when you were waiting for me to figure out an issue, because now, so it's not just us and our clients and, interest rates, it's always the ground below your feet are constantly moving. Yeah. Well, I want to make sure as a team leader that not just as a salesperson, so I can get my transactions done, my listings sold, my clients happy, but I also want to be able to make sure we're positioning properly in the market as a team for my team to be able to make sure they're out in front of it. So I don't make all those decisions. I collaborate with my team, with my senior sales partners. We collectively make the decision, and then we move forward. Yeah. Right. So.
Well, yeah. I think you said something that is really valuable and important for people to hear. You spend about 50% of your time working on the business, coaching, directing, working with the team, and only 50% or less of your time doing your own sales. I think people sometimes picture, oh, I'm gonna bring in a sales agent, I'll throw them some leads, and they'll take care of themselves. And I mean, you tell me, but I think usually that isn't the most sustainable way to build a successful team. You do actually have to stand up and do the work. You have to be the leader of the team. And you kind of mentioned that earlier about how you had to work on yourself as a leader. And I talk to people about this all the time. They say, I need an assistant, but I don't want to manage anybody. Well, then you like, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. That comes with it. Can you talk to that?
Typically because they're at capacity. That sounds like me earlier in at different times, honest, just being super transparent. Yeah. That sounds like someone that's at capacity, that's really screaming, I'm tired, I need a break. But you have to really do that stuff. I would just encourage anybody watching this, or will watch it at some point, you got to if you want those results and you want time away and you want to still like talking with people and not feel burnout, you have to build that stuff in advance, and you have to be willing to give up your income to be able to build something that is sustainable later and will create a revenue stream. As long as you're doing all the other things proper, doing right by your people and your clients, then it's going to create a revenue stream that far outweighs what you can make by yourself trying to, do everything yourself. It just doesn't make sense. I understand. Listen, I understand. It's like, man, I can't believe an assistant costs that much money, or I can't believe they charge that much per transaction, or I can't believe whatever. But, at the end of the day, you do this for 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 years, you're going to burn yourself out if you're not careful. If you're not putting the right people alongside you and running alongside them. And especially, I would say, Vanessa, the people that are actually better at doing those things than you are, Right. It's so funny. Our director of operations, I tell her all the time, like, I don't even know how to do this. Okay, here's a good thing. I don't know how to do that stuff, but I don't even want to know what it is. You do it, you do a great job. And I get out of the room, right? Yeah. I never used to be that way. So, those are the areas where I used to have to want to have my hand in everything. Mm-hmm. I've loved not having my hand in everything. In fact, there's no way for me to know how to do everything on the team, which is a good thing. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting, that's such an interesting progression that people have to go through. You're used to doing everything, and then you have to slowly unwind and let go and trust. And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. So there are two things I want to make sure we get to talk about today. One is the culture on your team, because I think you guys have a really strong and well-defined culture. That's something you really work on. And it's so important. As a recruiter, top talent is attracted to a company's culture. It's not about how much money they're going to make, right? And so what I always encourage people to really figure out, what is your culture, cultivate it. really own it, whatever it is, because then you'll attract the right kind of people. So talk about your culture on your team.
Well, I wasn't really planning on doing this, so forgive me as I lean for something really quick. But what comes to mind is every year we do we read a book all the time. You know, we just got done with the 4 disciplines of execution. I'm just opening up my iPad right here. Sorry. We did the 4 disciplines of execution, and after that there's so much overlapping. I don't know if Eat That Frog, okay, but we just did Eat That Frog, and which is, if you haven't read it, you got to read it. Everybody needs to be able to eat that frog every day. And now we're going back to an oldie but a goodie, richest man in Babylon. But it's the culture is really about getting real. And here's where we lose people, honestly. It's a matter of getting real, honest about what you want. Simon's book, Start With Why. When you, Simon Sinek, so when you're, if someone says, I want to make $1 million a year, and you say, well, why? What's going to drive you? What's your driving force, right? And then they say it's X, Y, and Z. Well, you're going to find out if X, Y, and Z is really important to them, right? Or if it's just superficial. So every year we do an offsite meeting somewhere really nice. And it's a whole day, no phones, no iWatches, everything's off. And that's pretty tough. But anyway, we do, is it probably backwards?
No, you can see it. How old will you be in 2040?
Okay, so this is the one. I don't want to put all the answers up there on the screen, probably if it has the person's name. I don't have my glasses, sorry. But anyway, it starts with questions, and I'll just read briefly to answer the question. We start off like this, and it's hours long. And by the end of the day, and then we go to dinner, I mean, you can imagine it starts off pretty interesting. I give this worksheet to them every year, a week in advance. And it says, and so here's some of the questions. As we enter into Q4 of 2020, what are you going to do differently starting today to make the necessary changes in your life, both personally and professionally, so you're tracking differently this time next year when you only have 19 years to make a difference, right? And then it goes into a succession of questions. What have you learned about yourself in 2020 that you're not impressed, but because of the team dynamics, it was brought to the surface? What have you experienced in 2020 that you didn't realize the amount of struggle or difficulty involved? What do you have to overcome in 2020 that what did you have to overcome in 2020 is difficult for you? How are you going to interact differently in 2021 with the team than you did in 2020? And it goes on and on, asks why, and then it gets into, how old will you be in 2040? How old will your friends and loved ones be? Write out at least 5 different people, their names and their ages, what they'll be into, what you want to experience differently between now and then. Based on your trajectory between 2019 and 2020, are you headed in that direction? Right? So we ask all these questions, and by the time, I'm telling you, everyone's got to type it out, and they've got to read, and they're going to read it, and they're going to hand them out to everybody, right? This is where we lose people, because they're like, I don't want to get that real. I'm like, then that's awesome. I wish you the best of luck, with your career, right? Because people that passionately want to do anything, great. And it reminds me of the book, Good to Great. If they want to do anything, then they've got to be totally committed, and they've got to trust the people that they're with. Right. By the end of this day, everybody in the room has cried, right? For and with other people, right? High fives, everything. And then we go to dinner, right? And then we have dinner and drinks, and then the next day is goal planning day, and we set our goals based on what we said we're going to do, right? Fantastic. So I would just say our culture is super transparent, but it's built on trust. It's trust within the team first, real accountability, right? My yes is a yes, my no is a no. And I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that, right? And that transcends into the client experience. And I think they feel that. I think they know that. And, of course, we have our our whole board with, with what, everything. They actually were redoing it right now on, because there's some people felt there was a few things that were missing, but we really try to keep, about 10 maximum core values at a time. And sometimes it's really hard to do that, but it's really based on trust, transparency, hard work, right? And grit. So I won't go on about that, but I will just tell you, we don't just go on and pick them off of a collage. We get them based on really at the heart of the people that are on our team, what's meaningful.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that is such a beautiful example of a good representation of your culture and what it would be like to work with you. This like very, very real, transparent, like you said, committed to growth. And if you're, and if you're surrounded by people who are like that, and you're like that, what a powerful group to be a part of. So
Yeah,
you are
great.
hiring right now. You're looking for another real estate assistant. We are actively searching. So let's just take a couple minutes to just talk about where does this person sit within your organization, and who are you looking for?
Right. So if you're thinking of the flow chart in your mind, and I'm sorry, I'll just wing it because we just don't have time for that. But you start at the top bubble and you have the team, and it breaks down into all the sales partners. An executive assistant supports a sales partner, whether it be myself or one of the other senior sales partners that is doing 30 or more transactions, roughly, all the way up from there, to do all the things that a normal agent would do, that keeps them from doing more transactions. So everything that doesn't require decision-making or negotiating, typically on our checklist, now there's another column, and it's the executive assistant that handles it. So setting up the show, it can be anything from, but not limited to, setting up the showings, working in tandem with the transaction manager. They're not doing transaction management, but they're getting all the things from associations to whatever it is, to the, and being the liaison. So that way the sales partner can then focus on doing the things that typically the person for this role, Vanessa, doesn't want to do, right? They don't want to take all the risks. Maybe they love real estate. They like being part of the transaction, but man, they don't want to be like, it's all about commission. It's everything comes down to me. I have to lean into those conversations and I don't feel like doing it. Well, okay, then this is probably a really good role for you. It'll also be good for them to be really honest, to look at how much money they're actually making, because if you're that person, you could be great in real estate and sales looks, man, I want to make $200,000. Well, that might be out of your comfort zone to have to sustain that, because you're constantly going to have to be negotiating. You're constantly going to have to be reworking people's, expectations, their buyers and the sellers, untangling the knots of lies between some people that are not so fabulous in our industry. So, it's not going to be your role. This is a great role. This person on the very young end in our market can make anywhere between, $55,000, $60,000 on a very entrance level, upwards of $100,000 a year. If you're a rock star and beyond, depends on your capacity, right? So so there's that. There's the executive assistant that you're hiring for. But I'll let you know while we're on here as well that you guys are also going to be looking for, as we scale up and as my top two agents are looking for, we're also looking for a production partner, and they earn a piece of the whole commission of that sales partner. And what they're doing, what do they do? Tons of showings, because the executive assistant shouldn't be doing tons of showings, and the agent can only be doing so much. So doing tons of showings. When we get back into open houses, doing tons of open houses with the sales partner there. Just being a piece of that side of the checklist that's all sales, nothing administrative for the most part, and just getting in and handling the volume of showings that we actually have. And that's a great way to get into work your way into our team as a salesperson, is under a production partner. It's really a paid internship where you can make between $40,000 and $60,000 a year, learning for the best of the best, working right alongside them. And then if you're able to, work your way into a sales partner role, and then sky's the limit.
Right. I really love the way you've segmented out the roles and responsibilities and how clear you are. And I think for any admin listening to this, they're hearing angels sing, because so few teams have your level of systems dialed in, and how nice to walk into an organization that actually knows what they're doing and it's all documented, and like you just have to learn how things go, and then you'll have opportunities to improve things over time once you see how things work, but you're not reinventing the wheel, and you're not trying to pull things out of your agents. Like who do you call for this? Like what's happening?
Right. No,
None of that.
Not at all. So, and that's because of our director of operations. I hired someone incredibly smarter than me. Sometimes I have to ask permission just to sit in the room while she's on Zoom calls talking about what she's talking about. So she runs the whole organization from a system standpoint.
Yeah.
I always tell people she's like, Dr. Reed on Criminal Minds. Sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what you just said, but I trust it's going to work. Because she understands where we want to go. She has all the systems from our scoreboarding with Sisu, our follow-up boss, transaction, management that connects with all these other things, and just on and on and on. But systematically, everything has a standard operating procedure, a video, instructions. The checklist has hot links. If you have any questions along the way, we have templates, we have everything. So it's really, it allows the salesperson to be like, thank God I don't have to do any of that, and I can just focus on this. And it allows, like what you said, the assistants, the administrators that are out there watching this right now, they can look at it and go, oh my God, that would be great. Because I'm tired of feel like I'm blowing sales. Why are they even asking me to deal with sales, right? Mm-hmm. And you're right, they're two different roles, they're two different people. I made all those mistakes in the first 10, 12 years of my career. All of them, horribly. Yeah.
Well, we live, we learn, we get through it, and now you are where you are today. Jimmy, thank you so much. I know you have a super busy day, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, and I think you shared some really valuable information. If you want to learn more about Jimmy's team, I will include the link in the description below. I'll also include the link to apply for the real estate assistant role on Jimmy's team. So check that out as well if you are looking for that opportunity. Jimmy, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, everything you do.
Bye-bye.